The most unsettling thing about the Overtoun Bridge isn't that dogs die there, it's that they come back. A dog survives the fall, climbs back up the embankment, walks to the same spot, and jumps again. That is not an accident. That is not fear. Whatever is pulling them over that railing is strong enough to override the most powerful survival instinct in the animal kingdom. In 1994, a man named Kevin Moy walked to the middle of the bridge, threw his infant son over the railing, and jumped himself. He survived. When police asked why, he said he believed his son was the Antichrist. Nobody connected what he did to what had been happening to the dogs for decades. Nobody thought to ask whether they should. The bridge was built in 1895 on the estate of Overtoun House, a Victorian mansion in the Scottish lowlands near Dumbarton. A single granite arch, 50 feet above the wooded gorge of the Overtoun Burn below. It carries almost no traffic. For the first half of the 20th century, nothing happened there that anyone recorded. The reports came in during the 1950s and 1960s. A dog approaching the bridge, pulling toward the right-hand parapet and going over. Then another. Then another. Local accounts were loose at first, the way accounts of something inexplicable always are. People didn't know what to make of it. They filed it away and moved on. By the 1990s, it was harder to dismiss. More than 50 dogs, by some estimates. The pattern was always the same. Walking with its owner, approaching the bridge normally. Somewhere near the right-hand side, it would slow, move toward the parapet, push its nose through the gap in the stone, and go over. The ones that survived the fall were often retrieved by their owners. Some of them, when brought back up, immediately returned to the same spot and jumped again. The story broke internationally in 2005 when a Scottish newspaper ran an investigation. The headline called it the Dog Suicide Bridge. Animal behaviorists, paranormal investigators, and local historians arrived at roughly the same time and began working the problem from different directions. The paranormal explanations came first, because they always do. Overtoun House had grief attached to it. The estate's last private owner had fallen into a depression after her husband's death and spent her final years alone, barely leaving the building. Local legend described the bridge as a thin place, a Celtic idea for somewhere the membrane between the living world and whatever lies beyond had worn unusually thin. A white lady said to appear near the waterfall below. These explanations were reported extensively and explained nothing. The more useful work was being done quietly. David Sexton, an animal behaviorist, spent time at the bridge in 2006 examining the structure and observing dogs crossing it. His conclusion pointed towards smell. The gorge beneath the bridge is dense with vegetation, rhododendron, bracken, heavy moss. Mink had colonized the area in large numbers. Mink produce a potent musk. To a dog, a scent that concentrated and unfamiliar doesn't register as danger. It registers as overwhelming interest. Sexton's argument was that dogs with strong prey drives were being drawn toward the parapet by a smell so intense it was overriding their spatial awareness. A dog pressing its nose through the stone gap to get closer to the source might simply not register the drop on the other side. It was a coherent theory. It explained the directional consistency. The dogs always jumped from the same side, where the mink population was densest. It explained why long-nosed breeds like retrievers and collies appeared most frequently in the accounts. It gave the whole thing a shape that felt, if not comfortable, at least contained. What it did not explain was why they came back. A dog that falls 50 feet onto rocky ground and survives does not emerge unaware of what just happened. It is injured. It is alone in a cold gorge. Every instinct it has is pulling it toward safety, toward warmth, toward the familiar. And yet, the documented cases of dogs returning to the same spot, sometimes immediately, sometimes after their owners have carried them back up, do not fit a model built on simple misdirection. Dr. Rupert Sheldrake, a biologist who has spent decades working on the outer edges of animal perception, offered a different frame. Not supernatural, biological. His argument was that the olfactory pull at Overtoun was likely only part of what was happening. Dogs in a state of extreme sensory overstimulation can enter something close to a trance, a condition in which normal spatial reasoning collapses under the weight of a single signal. In that state, the behavior is not irrational. It is simply overwhelmed. The return, in this model, is not a choice. It is a nervous system that has not processed what happened, still locked in the same loop, walked back into the trigger before the loop is broken. That is the invisible thing. Not a ghost, not a thin place. A circuit inside the animal, running on a signal too strong to interrupt, returning the dog to the edge it barely survived. The mechanism has no knowledge of what it is doing. The bridge has no knowledge of what it is doing to them. There is nothing there that means any of it. The jumps have continued. As recently as 2014, there were documented cases. The local council eventually posted a warning sign near the parapet, not for the dogs, for the owners. Researchers who have studied Overtoun consistently note something the headline versions leave out. The vast majority of dogs that cross that bridge feel nothing. They walk across, sniff the air, and move on. The ones that go over the edge represent a small fraction of all the animals that have passed that spot. Something about a specific dog, on a specific day, in a specific condition of attentiveness, creates the threshold. Nobody has identified what that threshold is. Nobody has predicted which dog, on which crossing, will be the one that doesn't come back. There is a version of this story that ends cleanly. The mink, the smell, the prey drive, the sensory overload. You can hold those facts and feel like the thing has been resolved. But explanation and understanding are not the same thing. We know the mechanism. We do not know why some animals cross that bridge 100 times without incident, and why one day, for one dog, something shifts. We do not know what moves inside an animal in the moment before it stops being able to protect itself. There are places in the world that act on certain minds in ways that cannot be fully accounted for. Overtoun is one of them. The bridge has not changed. The gorge has not changed. The mink are still there. And so is whatever brings them back. Not a ghost, not a spell, just a body, locked in a loop it cannot interrupt, returning to the edge it barely survived, returning because nothing in its nervous system has found a way to stop. A dog survives the fall, climbs back up the embankment, walks to the same spot, and the bridge is still there.